Hello, everyone. You're tuned in to Inscience. My name is Olena, and we welcome you to our Science Kids lecture series, a popular science space for children and for anyone getting to know science. Today, we're joined by astrophysicist Uliana Pilipenko, and together we'll try to understand the probability that a planet with life exists in the universe. Thank you. So, friends, you can watch this webinar thanks to the support of the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. And I'd be grateful if you could give a little heart slash like to the university right now and share your impressions in the comments after the lecture. If you're watching this later on YouTube. Nakim? I'd like to introduce today's lecturer. As I said earlier, we have Uliana Pilipenko with us, doctoral researcher at the Finnish Center for Astronomy with the European Southern Observatory Fincha and the University of Turku, and a participant in the European Space Agency's Summer Research Program. Hi, Uliana. Hi, I'm very happy to be here with you today. We have a very exciting topic, as Olena already said. We'll be talking about the possibility of extraterrestrial life existing in our galaxy. We'll find out what science has to say about this today. But first, I'd like to hear your personal opinions. So, what do you think? Do aliens exist? Or probably not? You can write in the chat. A plus if you think yes, and a minus if no. Let's see what you think. I can already see the first messages in the chat. We have some yes, some no, and lots of plus signs like maybe yes, not sure yet, possibly. Pluses and minuses. Someone even wrote that they are an alien. Uliana, what can you tell us about this? I think some of you might change your minds by the end of the lecture. Maybe yes, maybe no. Where aliens definitely exist is in science fiction. We love imagining what aliens might look like, what planets they could come from, and how we might communicate with them. There are many science fiction films and animated shows about this that you've likely seen. For example, some of you may know or may watch after the webinar an animated series set in the Star Trek universe. Here you see the main characters, who nicely represent the diversity of alien species. Some are more human-like in body structure, others are not so similar, like this little creature. The Star Trek universe was created long ago and includes many more alien species overall. You can see just a few of them here. People have invented a great deal. Or take the film Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. It beautifully depicts a huge space station where humans and various alien species live together, coexist, and collaborate. So, what do scientists actually say about the existence of aliens? First, we need to talk about a quantity called probability. It's right there in the title of the lecture. Probability describes how likely it is that an event will occur. If the probability equals 1, we say the event will definitely happen. The smaller the number, the less likely the event is. To calculate probability, we count the number of outcomes we're interested in, the number of all possible outcomes, and divide the first by the second. For example, in the simplest case, a coin toss, there are two sides, so two possible outcomes. If we want the probability of getting heads, that's 1 out of 2, because heads is one of two possibilities. That's a simple example to give you a feel for the idea. Of course, the possibility of extraterrestrial life is much more complex than a coin toss. So how do scientists approach this difficult question? The first step is to break the big question into several smaller ones. In the search for extraterrestrial life, this was done by the American scientist Frank Drake. Here he is in the photo. He formulated an equation to estimate how many extraterrestrial civilizations might exist in our galaxy, the Milky Way. Here is that equation. Each letter represents one of the smaller questions he broke the problem into. This is known as the Drake equation. We can sketch the equation like this. Our main question is how many extraterrestrial civilizations we might find in our galaxy, which relates to the probability that such civilizations exist. We split this into 7 sub-questions. We'll go through them now so you can understand how we estimate the number of civilizations. Simpler questions don't necessarily mean they're easy. You'll see soon enough, but one step at a time. Per year. The first question, how many stars are there in our galaxy? We live on a planet orbiting a star, our sun. We expect aliens would also live on a planet orbiting a star. That's our starting point. There are roughly 200 billion stars in our galaxy. That's an enormous number. If you took that many steps, you could walk around Earth more than 1,000 times. So far, this looks optimistic. There are many places to look for other worlds. The next question: how many of those stars have planets? Planets that orbit stars other than the Sun are called exoplanets. When Frank Drake proposed his equation, not a single exoplanet had been discovered. About 30 years later, scientists discovered the planet 51 Pegasi b, shown here. It was the first exoplanet found orbiting a sun-like star. It was a major discovery, and the scientists received the Nobel Prize for it. After that, a great exoplanet hunt began. Today, we know of about 6,000 exoplanets. They're quite diverse. Some are more like Jupiter or Neptune in our solar system, and some are smaller, more like Earth, and those are only the planets we've detected. Overall, we estimate that most stars in our galaxy have planets. Stars and planets generally form together. So there are about as many exoplanets in the Milky Way as there are stars, roughly 200 billion and likely even more. The next question: how many planets are potentially habitable? Here's a question for you again. What do we need for life? What must a planet have for organisms like us to function? Write in the chat. I see the first answers. Oxygen. Oxygen. Water. Air. Food. Oxygen. Water. Water. Air. Water. Oxygen. Water. Trees. Certain other substances. Plants. So, lots of different ideas. Thank you. You're broadly right, but because we can't see much detail on exoplanet surfaces, they're small, far away, and so on, the main criterion we use for potential habitability is the presence of liquid water, seas, oceans, etc. That's why those who said water set me up perfectly for what comes next. We can measure the distance from a star to an exoplanet. If the planet is too close to its star, it's too hot and water evaporates. Too far and it's too cold and water freezes. Around every star, there's a zone where water can exist in liquid form, the habitable zone, and we do find planets in these zones. A famous example is the TRAPPIST-1 system, a small star with 7 Earth-sized planets. You can compare sizes here. 3 of those planets lie within the habitable zone. Usually, finding even one planet in the habitable zone of a system is great. It's not super common, but we find them systematically. Given there are hundreds of billions of planets, that means billions of planets in habitable zones. So far, still good. There may be billions of planets where life could potentially exist. Next comes the truly hard part. On how many of those planets did life actually appear? Potential for life and the actual existence of life are different things. Since we only know of life on Earth, we can only make assumptions here. Then, on how many planets did life develop into a civilization, i.e., develop technology, and so on? How many of those civilizations transmit signals? You may know that humans send signals that carry information about us and our location in the galaxy, but there's no guarantee other civilizations do the same. We simply don't know. For these last 4 questions, we can't measure directly. We can only make assumptions. If you're wondering whether the Drake equation has a single answer, the answer is no. Depending on the values you choose for the parameters, you can get anything from a few civilizations to many millions. That's a huge spread, far from a precise answer. What astronomers mostly agree on is that such civilizations likely do exist. We don't know how many, but chances are they exist, even if we can say very little with certainty. As a concrete example, a 2020 study estimated the possible number of civilizations in the Milky Way using a variant of the Drake equation and came up with 36 civilizations. Sounds great, right? Meeting 36 different alien species tomorrow would be quite an experience. The problem is our galaxy is enormous. The distance to the nearest such civilization could be 17,000 light years. If we sent them a signal, they'd receive it in 17,000 years. That's not like dialing a number and having someone pick up. Communication would be extremely difficult and extremely slow, if it's possible at all. So, in summary, the probability that aliens exist is not 0. It's small, but not so small that we can say they definitely don't exist. However, the probability of communicating with them is very, very small. Science keeps advancing, and we'll certainly hear more on this topic. While we wait for new discoveries, you can enjoy some science fiction books. For example, The Planet Thief, Chronicles of Cassiopeia by Natalia Pashinska, a book about a boy who lives on a desert planet, travels through space and searches for the secret of his origins. There are space pirates too, if you like those. Another is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, a book about a girl from a strange planet. This world has seas made of spores which have various curious properties. It follows her adventures on that planet. Oh, Zoe. And Dragon Pearl by Yoon Lee, also about a girl in a strange world. She can shapeshift into people, animals, or objects, and she wants to join the Space Forces to have adventures and travel the cosmos. Very exciting. Check them out in your free time. Thank you, Uliana. Friends, we'll be really looking forward to your homework, what your characters look like. If you haven't invented your character yet, now's the perfect time. I can't wait to read the descriptions of your drawings, where your character finds themselves this time, which planets are nearby, and what's unique about this new universe your character ends up in. We're very, very excited to see them. If you're joining us for the first time, you can send your completed tasks to our Telegram chat. Just scan the QR code on the screen to join. We'll be waiting. And now, let's move on to the last slide of the lecture part, where I'll tell you what lecture awaits you this Thursday. Hauerfriskine. This Thursday, our journey through the boundless expanses of space continues. We'll be joined by astrophysicist Yuliana Kuznetsova, and together we'll discuss the strangest planets in the universe. Could there be planets where it rains molten iron, or planets that orbit 2 or even 3 stars, or worlds completely covered by water, or something else? You can already write your guesses in the comments under this video on YouTube when you watch it. And for our older listeners, a reminder. Our project has Monobank, including a Monobank jar, and Patreon, where you can support our lecture series so that more popular science lectures by Ukrainian scientists appear on Ukrainian YouTube. Thank you for staying with us, and see you next time. Bye-bye.